Well, everybody, welcome back to the Trig Podcast of Joya and Gosa TV on this beautiful Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, here from the Los Angeles area, Long Beach, California. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to this beautiful day. I was looking at the wrong camera. I have a couple of them. So welcome back to my channel. I want to just, as always, remind you of this up here. We will get through this. Even though I know it seems left and right and up and down, like things are whatever. I like what LeBron James says. He says he doesn't call this year the C word, the V word. He doesn't call it any of those things. He doesn't name them for the bad things. He says this is 2020. And I like that mentality. You know, this is another year. And every year has its challenges and its opportunities. And this is 2020. And that's what we have to do, is think about. But today I want to actually talk to you about something that's been on my mind for maybe years. And that's the idea of discovering and being comfortable knowing who you are. Knowing who you are. And so some background. So one of the things, speaking of who I am and who we are, one of the things that I love to do is to listen to podcasts and to inspirational input. And one of those inspirational podcasts is by my friend, virtual friend. We've emailed a few times and etc. Cliff Ravenscraft. And so you can look him up online, and he has a great podcast that is called the Mindset Answer Man. It used to be called the Podcast Answer Man. And now it's more about basically, thinking positively. And then he also has a vlog on YouTube and a lot of great videos. And at times he overwhelms me with so much maybe positivity, if that's possible. I don't know if that's really a bad thing, but certainly this year I've needed to just listen to positive content. And it's not like, for example, just positive as in you're amazing, you're great. It's more the process that he's going through on how he is trying to be awesome. He has an online business where he first started by teaching people how to podcast. And so that's how I got interested in his content. And from his own reports, financial, he makes about $250,000 a year, $250,000 a year or so, teaching people how to podcast. And now it's more, as I said, courses and masterminds and coaching on how to think rightly. And I must admit, I called him once to see if I could be a part of his mastermind program, and I think he charges $1,000 a month to be a part of his program. And that sounds crazy. I can't afford that. Not many of us can, but I must tell you, I was so, I don't know if tempted is the right word, but I was so eager. I wish I could afford that, because from hearing him, I want to be around not just him, but people like him and some of the other members of the mastermind to stay focused. Because like you, I have a great calling upon my life, but there are things mostly between the ears, as they say, that distract us, right, from who we are supposed to be. And so one of the things that he is talking about these days, this week, is this idea of the shiny object syndrome, or SOS, as some people call it. And the shiny object syndrome, I'm not going to talk about that today. That's not really what I want to talk about. But his whole point in talking about the shiny object syndrome, and what that means is that you are easily distracted by new things, by like a child, by the latest shiny object. And in the business world, in the entrepreneurial world, that can be a bad thing from what people kind of tell you or make you think. But I love, and I really haven't had an opinion on it, really, for me, because I know I have that syndrome. I have the tendency to be distracted by the next and the greatest idea. And I've never felt bad about it, but definitely it seems like most people aren't that way, right? But then he talked about, in his podcast this week, about how he is so proud, I guess you could say, or he's comfortable being a distracted, shiny object syndrome kind of guy. And he doesn't call it a syndrome. He calls it just, this is just who I am. And I like how he's honest about saying, yeah, there's some of the repercussions mostly being that people criticize him for being distracted. But at the same time, he says that if he wasn't that way, he wouldn't be successful. In his marriage, he's been married, I think, 20, maybe 25 years, like Rochelle and I. He's about my age. He's lost a ton of weight. He used to be like 300 plus pounds. Now he's in the 200s. He's done conferences. And as I said, financially, he's definitely doing way better than me and most of us. And so I want to talk about being comfortable being who you are. And I want to use my story to maybe give you kind of an example of what you can do. Now, speaking of using my example, one of the things that this is maybe all preface or intro to the content. One of the things that I have been told, maybe by my own conscience or even by mentors, to not do is to not talk about myself. I remember and Cliff, he talks about himself all the time. And maybe that's what I love most about him, is that he is unapologetic about talking about himself. And yes, at times it feels selfish, even egomaniac-ish or prideful, but I would say 99% of it feels like I'm learning something. Like his honesty, or just simply his focus on his own example, is very powerful because I can relate to so much of what he says. And if he was just talking about other people or about things that he's learning, it wouldn't be as powerful. Now, at the same time, like he just said, he leaves himself open to criticism. And maybe that's why I resist or I shy away from talking about myself. But I think that in my case, talking about myself is first necessary for me to be in tune with who I really am. And second, it can be a very good example to other people. And so, but I think some of the worries that at least come to my mind is, well, if I'm selfish or if I talk about me, then I'm going to lose my job. Or people are going to think, what kind of spiritual leader are you? And I think all that spiritual leader, pastor, all that kind of title or expectation at times, it keeps me from being maybe even more effective because of all these things. So let me get into kind of the process of learning how to be ourselves and using my story, some of the hang-ups, some of the victories, and what I'm learning. So one of the things that I always have to be aware of is that it's hard for me to know who I really am. And so I start with that. Many times, even though maybe by now I should know better, I don't know who I really am. But at the same time, I've realized that that's not really true. I do know who I am. It's just that I am afraid of being judged by others. I would say that that's probably my greatest obstacle or fear, is to be judged. I'm not sure where that comes from. My parents weren't that way, but somehow maybe, as I mentioned, growing up in the church, maybe that's part of it. It's maybe my personality. Perhaps it's having gone through experiences where I was judged harshly. It left me kind of jittery when it comes to being the true me. And the ironic thing, the irony is that being the true us isn't anything bad. It's just simply the quirks and the personality or ease that we each have. And guess what? Everyone already knows who we really are. And I find that the most powerful thing is to actually be who you are. So let me get more specific. So I remember being in a meeting years ago when it was a pretty tough conversation about performance, and a lot of criticism was being thrown my way. And I remember saying, I'm a creative. And then someone in that room kind of threw that in my face, said, oh, you're one of those. And it was another example of how one of the things that I obviously am, speaking of who are you really, is I'm a creative. And I think that those experiences, if I'm honest, they have kept me from being comfortable being who I am. Another negative experience, and I guess I'm starting with these, right? Because these are the things that are obstacles to being yourself or to even knowing who you really are. I remember being at a conference on leadership. And I remember the speaker said, if you have the gift of leadership, stand up. And I stood up right away because I knew just in my heart that the pure me, without criticism or fears, I knew that I am a leader. I'm an amazing leader. But then I remember my supervisor, who was also in the room, I think he also stood. And then I don't know if at the moment or afterwards, he said, you're not a leader. Why'd you stand up? And because he was in a place of authority over me, like this other meeting, those things, they quenched the true essence of who I am. As if being a leader is bad, or as if someone can say if I am or not a leader, and then as if being a creative is a bad thing. And now when it comes to being a creative, I think the reason why I often fear being a creative is because it seems like, at least in the church, that the people that are the best leaders are very left brain. They're the CEO types, those domineering types who tell everyone what to do, or those super charismatic people that shake every hand and kiss every baby, that don't struggle with introversion or with anxiety or with feelings or with creativity. And so maybe even being in the American culture, perhaps, and mostly being in the white American culture, this is not about racism. This is just about personalities. Perhaps it tainted my view of myself as a creative man, as a very passionate man who sweats, who gets nervous, who is very committed, who is someone who loves people and who loves ideas. But because the typical prototypical CEO or president or the head honcho is kind of a tight upper lip person, I never maybe accepted the fact, or even worse, I try to be that way, even though I'm not that way. And so I guess I'm starting with all of the hangups that we can have to being our true selves. And you have to be very aware and of the pain that those things bring. I mean, they really have brought me pain. And even as I'm sitting here, it's not as painful, but I can go back there. And you have to resist that. You have to resist the things that some people can tend to make you feel about yourself and about who you really are. Excuse me. I remember, speaking of obstacles, so I guess let me just keep going down all the obstacles to being yourself. I remember talking once, I was doing a talk about personalities, and I said, well, my personality type is that I sometimes deal with fear and anxiety. And I remember having an older man afterwards pull me aside and said, I don't like it when you say that. You shouldn't be anxious. And it was, again, one of those, moments where I felt like it wasn't okay to be myself, or as if that's all there is to me. Or that being vulnerable about my weaknesses, even though it's biblical and we all know Paul and we all know Jesus was, had a Gethsemane experience. And even though we all know all these things biblically, but when we actually have, quote, a leader that I've always been, talk about weakness or about difficulties that he or she goes through, some people are drawn to that, other people resist that, or maybe are afraid of that for because of their own reasons, right? And perhaps not having always the guidance. This is another topic. I haven't always known how to put that in its place. And instead, I've absorbed it into my body, which then turns into fear. Now, let me talk about the positive experiences, the things that have actually helped me to be myself. So I was doing another talk, and I was talking similarly about just being honest about my process. And I remember I had this lady come up to me and give me a hug, and she began to cry. And then she wrote me an email, I think, or maybe she said it right there on the spot. She said, "Thank you for being so authentic." I've been to so many churches, and you're the first where I have felt accepted. And that moment made me feel so proud, because that, even though I can feel so judged by other people, maybe it's my problem, but people definitely have an influence, right? That moment made me feel so honest in myself, that it's not either or, that you don't have to be one or the other. That's just who I am. And maybe I'm painting a picture of me being some fearful person. Those are just moments. And so we'll get that. We'll get to to all this here in a second. Another moment happened just recently. Obviously, as you know, I love music. And so, but for maybe 10 years, I let music go. I stopped doing music completely. And I was very resistant to it. Almost, maybe back to the same topic, being afraid to be my true self. And so, but then the last few months, I've had a friend who, he came over to our house before all this happened. And I don't know, we weren't even talking about music. We're talking about church and leadership and stuff. And then, because I have a bunch of guitars here, I said, hey, I also play music. He didn't even know. It's like, oh, really? And so I played and I sang a song that I had just written, and he was just in awe. And ever since that moment, this man of God, who's become a quick friend, and because he also plays music, and he also uses music to help people, even though he's also a lead pastor, he's been so encouraging to me. Even just last night we were talking, and he's like, don't forget to write songs, because I was dealing with some stuff last night. So we prayed together, and he said, don't forget to write a song. And whereas normally that would make me afraid that, well, I'm more than just a musician, right? I'm more than just a creative, because of all these things I've mentioned, of people's comments and all that stuff. Instead, I receive it as not a compliment, but as an affirmation of who I am. An affirmation is one of those things that I have needed, and I'm learning to not need so much, and to believe in myself, right? And so that was very, very encouraging. And he has been a godsend. Maybe the thing that speaking of kind of knowing who you are, I've always longed to be a great communicator, whether here or on a platform or giving a talk. And I've never gotten many compliments about my teaching or my speaking. And so I've always longed for that, maybe wrongly, perhaps rightly. And I am that's just one of many areas, but I can quickly defeat myself that I don't get those compliments, that I'm a great communicator, because it's something that I want so much. Because in my mind, great communicators, going back to wanting to maybe not accept who you're really, not being comfortable in your own skin is what I mean to say. I've always thought, well, only the great communicators have churches of 10,000, or only great communicators get asked to speak on platforms or conferences. And so because I don't have none of those things, I must be a terrible communicator. And I've worked so hard at being a great communicator. And my mind always goes to try to, I guess, grade myself. I'm always giving myself an A, a B, mostly Fs when it comes to my talks. But over the last few years, through especially my wife, Rochelle's confidence and belief in me, I have grown to be a very confident man in my speaking. And of course, like with music, there's so much for me to still learn. Sometimes, ironically, even though I get so many compliments about my music, I sometimes listen to myself or to my songs and I think, man, that really is terrible. I listen to Post Malone or to, I don't know, some of these amazing young singers these days, or even just, I don't know, old guys like me. And I think, man, I'm really a terrible musician. And yet, for some reason, the comments have always been positive about my music. But I've always been afraid, like, well, if I'm not this and if I'm this and I'm not that, as if somehow there's this limit on how many things you can be good at. And I often think, well, Charles Stanley doesn't deal with this because everyone says, wow, what a great communicator, right? And it goes back to accepting who you are. So maybe I'm not Charles Stanley, but what's the point of comparing? Maybe my authentic me is to not be Charles Stanley, but to be me and to communicate in the way that I communicate best. And of course, always work on it. Of course, I'm always, okay, don't talk so long. Don't belabor the points. Get on with it. I know these things about myself. And so I'm always trying to grow. The thing that encourages me about Cliff, speaking of, I guess, back to Cliff, is that he also is so long-winded. He will talk for 2 hours. And guess who listens for 2 hours? This guy. Because I connect with what he says. He could talk for 5 hours and I would listen to him while driving or at work or whatever, even at night, because what he says, he's not eloquent per se, but it's just so honest and it is practical and it just helps me. And I'm not trying to be him, but I just use him as an example of being true to who we really are. Who are we really? Who are you really? So I started with learning the obstacles. What keeps you, what prevents you from being the true you. Then I talked about learning who you really are. So let's talk about learning who we really are. How do you discover that? Well, in my world, one of the things that I am is I love personality stuff. I love psychology. I've been in counseling for many years because of many things. And so I've always enjoyed, out of my own experience, learning about the mind and why we are the way we are. And so I've learned a ton about different tests and strengths finders to the Myers-Briggs. And of course, now the last 10 years or so, the Enneagram, more like the last 5 years. And so all those tools have helped me tremendously to learn why we are the way we are. And some people like that, some don't. Again, back to judgment. Oh, church people shouldn't be talking about personality. Or I always look for biblical references to that. And actually, it was my father-in-law. I wasn't even asking for this, but he gave me a verse that really helped me when it comes to looking for balance as Christians. And it's a verse, I think it's in Matthew 2, where it says in there that Jesus grew in wisdom and stature. So wisdom is the inner life, right? But stature means his body. And that was a key verse for me to realize that even though the church and some aspects of the church, the more conservative parts of the church will tell you, no, it's just about spirit, which I forget what the name of that theology is, but that's a theology that isn't really biblical. What's truly biblical is that we ought to be about all three things: mind, body, and soul. So anyway, all that to say that even this area can be something that I am often afraid. I'm not afraid, but some people can judge. But there are many people that learn from this stuff. And so all that to say that I've learned that I am a creative. And so one of the things you may want to do is to find tools that will help you discover who you are beyond the truth that you are a child of God and created in the image of God. And to me, that's the foundation. And maybe that's the end goal as well. That's what I've discovered. But the process of undoing a lot of the negative things that people in life and self tell you, sometimes you have to go through steps and through a process. I love process. I believe in process. Now, another thing that I've learned through all these tools about myself is not only am I creative and I deal with fear, but that I am a very positive person. That's why I talk about joy all the time, right? And gozo and the bell and the cups and my hat. I used to wear that. I'm a silly adventure type of person. I don't come across as silly a lot of times, but I really am. I tell bad jokes all the time, dad jokes, I guess, as they call them. I wear the hat. I have my Goso phase. There's this mask that I use. I did an event just recently, and I didn't wear them, but I had all these little gadgets around me. I love little Goso gadgets. And that's a real part of me. I've always loved that. Since I was a little boy, I've been an adventure person. And does that sometimes get me in trouble because I get off from the thing that I'm supposed to be doing? I guess, but it really, and that's what I love about Cliff's podcast, is that actually refreshes me because I get bored doing the same thing. And I don't do 20 things. For me, it's more like 3 or 4 things that I do and that I'm really good at. Speaking, emceeing, entertaining, music, of course, technology. It's not 20 things. I'm not great at, I don't know, cleaning the house or cooking. I'm not great at working on cars. I'm not great at a lot of things. I'm not great at details. I'm not great at a million things. But I know that the 3, 4 things that I am good at, I enjoy doing. I enjoy working out. I haven't worked out in like 10 years, it feels like, but I love working out. I love being successful. Back to the whole personality thing. I'm an Enneagram 3 with a 4 wing. And all that means is that I'm an achiever, but I also have this creative side that sometimes, I don't know, slows me down, but at times it refreshes me when I write a song or when I sing. Now, the 3, the achiever in me, wants to accomplish everything. And guess what? Most things I'm amazing at. Most things that I try, I can be very systematic and kind of predictable. I don't like to change things very quickly. Or if I do, I only like it if I'm doing the changing. I don't like things to be changed around me without me knowing. And I'm growing in these things, of course. I'm always growing. But when it comes to creativity or wanting to do new things all the time, I love that about myself. And I have been judged by it. I remember another terrible moment. I was emceeing an event at school, at our kids' school when they were little. And there were like hundreds of people there. And I was just entertaining the heck out of that place, telling jokes and speaking English and Spanish. I even brought my guitar. And I was interviewing people. I was just the MC that I love to be. And then at the end, I was playing music on top of it all and singing my own songs. And then this parent, and definitely he had a chip on his shoulder, he came up to me and he said, with a mean look, not complimentary at all, he said, "Are you some kind of Renaissance man or something? Are you some kind of Renaissance man or something?" And he did it kind of, that way, like putting me down. Feeling, I'm sure, insecure himself is what my beautiful wife has taught me. And I didn't even know what a Renaissance man was. I was so, I guess, hurt and bothered by the whole thing. I looked it up online that night. And I thought, wow, I don't want to be a Renaissance man, because that's someone who goes from thing to thing, who does it all, a jack of all trades and master of none. But then the more I've thought about it is, I am great at everything. I mean, I'm not a CPA that's been a CPA for 50 years. I'm not a teacher who's been a teacher at a school for 50 years. I love doing everything, and I do everything at a high level. That's just how I've always been. And some people don't like that. They want me to be about one thing. I don't even know who those people are, but But I know that that's brought me a ton of success. Now, I don't make $250,000 a year. And that's not really even my goal. But of course, I would wish that we had 50 people here watching me instead of 0 or 1. Of course, I would want my church to have 5,000 people, like the river. Of course, I wish for external success, because I think, well, I'm so amazing, right? And of course, when those things don't come in 3 months or in 3 years, I then began to think of all these negative things and think, well, I guess they were all right. I guess I was wrong. But you know what? Here's the truth. Here's another thing that I use to know who I really am. I talk to God. I say to him, Lord, am I a great speaker? And he's like, son, you are an amazing speaker and communicator. But then, Lord, and he's like, son, I've called you. I sometimes will say to God, I say, Lord, am I supposed to be online and doing all this craziness, even though nobody watches me? And God says, keep doing it, son. I'm with you. You are amazing at it. And I never hear, nor do I need to hear, well, eventually. I don't need to hear that. All I need to know from God is that he is for me, not against me. And then I'll say, well, God, but maybe if I was more this way, or if I was a more eloquent person, or maybe I should have stayed with music and become an amazing, worship leader that is known worldwide. And God always says, son, you've done the right thing. You've listened to me. Everything you've done that was according to his will, you were doing it according to my will. I was with you, not against you. Now, have there been moments where I have messed up and I've said the wrong thing or I've done the wrong thing? Of course there have been. And I'm very comfortable talking about all of my mistakes, my failures. But even those, I have learned to not put myself down so much, but to live in the grace of God. Nothing terrible. I married my beautiful wife. I've never stolen money. I've never cheated on anybody. But, just character things. And I've learned to accept myself, that even in that there is the grace of God, that those things are actually here to remind me how imperfect I am. And back to that lady who said, thank you for being honest. That's what makes me effective with her, and maybe with you, and maybe with two people. So yeah, I don't have a church of 10,000. I'm not Dante at the river. And I wish I was, because I believe in myself. I don't want money, success, a Ferrari. I don't want things. And that's what sometimes people think. I want impact. I don't even want anything. I just believe in what God has given me. And so I expect a certain kind of result, a certain kind of not reward, but of something that is seen, because I've always seen that. And this is another way that you can know who you really are, is look back at your childhood. And this is something that the Enneagram has really taught me. So when I was about, the wind just closed the door there. When I was about 7 years old, I remember, maybe I was 8 or 9. I remember being in the back of the bus at school. So maybe I was 10, 11 if I was riding the bus to school. Anyway, and one of the things that I am not great at details. Years, dates. I forget the lyrics to my own songs, much less try to remember when things happen. It's that creative mind, that beautiful mind, right? Now, I was in the back of the bus and I had a Rubik's Cube. I've told this story before. And I wanted to figure it out faster than anyone else, than all my friends, because I wanted all of them to admire me. I've always been that way. So I studied all the different patterns. There was no online. I had little books and I don't know, maybe something at the library or at the bookstore that my mom got me. And I studied how to beat the Rubik's Cube. Remember that Rubik's Cube for those of us 80s kids? And guess what? I don't know if it happened in a week or 2 weeks. I figured it out. And my greatest joy was every afternoon taking that bus back home, being in the back of the bus and having all my friends be in awe and cheer me on, because I was the fastest and the best at figuring out that ghost of Rubik's Cube. How awesome is that? That's how, we all have memories of who we are, who we truly are, before people criticize you and before life began to beat you down, or before you made mistakes. I haven't made mistakes in life. I married the woman of my dreams. I've bought 2 homes, hoping to buy one eventually. I've become the lead pastor of beautiful churches the last 10 years. I led worship at a high level for 20 years. I write songs. I have a gorgeous wife that loves me, that I'm faithful and committed to. We have 3 amazing children. I mean, if you really want to talk about what matters in life, most of all, we have a faith in Jesus Christ. And I get to talk to people about Jesus and sing to them every week now through technology. I mean, talk about a dream life. But I think for every man, every human, every woman, we have this longing. And maybe some of us have it more than others. Maybe that's why I love Cliff so much and how he talks about the shiny object. We want more. Rochelle doesn't. My CPA doesn't. But there are some of us who have this gift, and it is a gift from God, who want the shiny object, who want the next best thing. And do I sometimes eat like they say, the poisonous mushroom? Heck yes, all the time. Do people criticize me? Yes. Do I criticize myself? Not really, but I'm afraid of what people say. But do I eventually figure it out and get the Rubik's Cube to work and have everyone be in awe? Not of me, but like, wow, this is possible. Yes. Eventually, I will figure out how to have a successful church. Eventually, I will figure out how to have more people here online. I don't know how. I don't know when. But I know that the way my mind works is to always keep going. I think it was years ago when I was in a pretty dark place, just really not believing in myself. On my computer, we all put little stickies and such. And I had many, mostly how to speak well on camera. But I eventually got rid of all those as I got better and stuff. And the only one I left was one that says, never give up. Never give up. And that was powerful for me. It became my mantra. And not only did it become something I was hoping to do, it became something that I was doing. It became my truth. I never give up. At fitness, I will never give up. At finishing my master's degree, and I wish I could get a PhD, I will never give up. I have 2 years left to finish it. And even with that, I've often thought about, man, I'm a failure with that. You know why I haven't finished my master's degree? It's because when the program switched from meeting in person, this is before this year, this is like 8 years ago, to online, that really ruined me because I am such a people person and I am an in the moment person. To have to type things on a computer by Wednesday night and respond to 2 people by Friday, it killed my jam. You know how like a lot of parents right now are saying my kid won't learn through this iPad? I am one of those kids. I do not learn through an iPad. And because my seminary was way too far, like 2 hours away one way, and super expensive, $3,000 for one class. And we're talking about 30 classes more that I have. And I've done maybe, I think I have like 6 classes left out of the, whatever, I don't know, 70 units, and I have like 20 left. It brings me deep shame, but I understand why it's happened. I am so intelligent. I read, I don't know the Bible like more than anyone, but the way my mind works, I've told Rochelle this many times, the reason why I teach and preach is because for some reason, God's given talent, I open the Bible and I see things. And sometimes I see so many things that then I have to like limit what I say. And that's my biggest hang up is, okay, limit. I'm probably like best at 20-minute talks, not 3 hours. But I have 3 hours worth of content, just like I have right now. Like every video that I post, and that's why Facebook and all these places don't like me, because most people on these platforms don't like long content. And maybe it's not very good content. I don't know. But I'm not even going to go there. It's not important to me. I am being true to who I am. But when it comes to seminary, anyway, that's just a side thing. But it shows how there are some things that just don't work for you. If my seminary was a class at my church every Thursday night, like we actually have a seminary right now, it's just not the same one, I would have a PhD by now at 51, because that's how much I love education, studying, and that's how good I am at finishing degrees. Now, when they get to be laborious and when, like I said, all of these rules back to the details, that's where I struggle. I'm a creative. And maybe you have a child who's a creative, I've never struggled with grades. I've always gotten all A's since I was a little boy all the way till today. But all of my F's that I've gotten, all of the fails that I've gotten in seminary have been because of the system that is an online system. That for a creative and a social type, I guess, someone who likes to be admired, back to the Rubik's Cube thing, to just be online and have no response is detrimental. I don't learn that way. And so even that you have to learn. And so I've thought about, I guess, to harp on the whole degree thing, on going to something, switching my whole degree to something that, not this year, but in 2021, that I can actually meet with someone, with a group close by. I don't want to drive 2 hours. I don't care what seminary it is, the name of it anymore. I already have enough units from Fuller and Talbot that I can probably get even a degree from them by transferring and blah, blah. But anyway, where I can actually meet with a group of 8, 9 people and finish this thing. And yes, I don't know, I'm probably too old for a PhD now, but it is my dream. And so maybe I will go on to a doctorate. But I'm describing all those things because that's how we all can talk to ourselves, right? Negatively or positively, no matter our age, no matter how much success we've had or not success. I know that I will succeed at all these things that I'm committed to. I don't know when, I don't really care about when, but in God's timing, I will succeed because that's just who I've always been. I remember, speaking of success, I remember learning the piano when I was in my mid-20s. I grew up with a guitar, never learned music theory until I was in my 20s, never learned how to sing until I was in my 20s, meaning, I guess, in the traditional way, choir and reading music. Now I do because I went to school for it. I went to school for 2 years to learn music because that's who I am. If I want to do something, I'm going to go and become amazing at it. And I'm not saying I'm amazing at it, but the commitment is always there. And that's something that is true of me and of you. You want something, you commit to it. And that's what makes you amazing. That's what makes us amazing. And so I remember taking classes and, music is all, I play flute, I play banjo, I play accordion, I play bass, drums, guitar, piano. I sing tenor, first voice, alto, not soprano. I record. I mean, you see all the stuff that I do, right? I make beats. I know. Anyway, I was playing the piano at a church, and the lady who was the pianist heard me. And this is, again, one of those things, right? Things that happen. She came out of her office, came on stage all the way to tell me, who do you think you are playing the piano? Who taught you how to play so well? Like in this negative, condescending tone. Because she had only seen me play guitar up until that moment. It wasn't like, wow, I'm so proud of you, Trig. Wow, can you tell me, how did you get to be so amazing? Wow, that's the kind of son I want to have. It was more like, who gave you the right to play the piano? That's what I do. I can't help to be amazing at everything I do. Now, I'm not the greatest piano player. Like, I'm not the greatest anything. But I play piano. I took lessons. I taught myself. Because I wanted to. And I did it. I never gave up. But these things, they happen. I don't know why they've happened to me so many times. But I continue to believe. And now, let's talk about now God again. I guess we're talking about you have to listen to God's voice, right? Even though you have all these negative voices. We all have them. So let me talk about that. Let me just take a break here. I'll be right back in a second. Thank you for being here. Don't go anywhere. Okay, so I'm back. I had to get a drink and some coffee here. Oh, man, I feel better already. Okay, let's keep going. I hope this is helping you. Leave me a comment below. At least is one way. I have a timer here, or I mean a counter of how many people are watching me. It's 3 million. No, you know how many people are watching. You. But that's okay, as I said. But we're talking about God. One of the things that is very important, or one of the things that has helped me know who I am. There's a song that I love. It says, I know who I am yours. What a beautiful and yet such a powerful and foundational statement. I know who I am. Now, what our minds want to tell us, or at least for me, am I a great speaker? Am I a successful pastor? Am I in shape? Do I have a doctorate? Am I what? Yeah. Those are the 2-3 things that and you, I know you have 2 or 3 things. Am I admired enough? I don't think that's as important. Definitely the first 2-3. Am I successful, basically? Enneagram 3, very classic. But that song says, I know who I am yours, and you are mine. Now, that is something that happened to me, meaning that experience a couple of times over the last few years, and it's really, really helped me, and I want to share this with you. So, because of all these things I've mentioned, these negative experiences, which I've had dozens of them, negative people, leaders, people in power that have put me down. Some of it has been racist, some of it has been jealousy, some of it has been just mean people. I had a lady, I remember, I was maybe in my early 30s, and it was like my last week at this church, and she was maybe in her 60s, and she was a musician, and she said, you know, I wanted your job when you first came. I said, oh, I can do everything you do better than you. I said, oh, okay, well, see you later. Crazy, huh? The things that people hold in. And I think, why? And here's the thing that saves me. I don't look at myself and think, oh, what did I do to her? Nothing with that case. And even if I did something to her, I don't know, at some point, wow, right? Talk about holding it in. And I've had many people criticize me so harshly. People that I thought were my friends. And what I love about Rochelle on a million thing is that she always tells me, David, that's on them. That's on them, not on you. And that has helped our children. That helps me. And so anyway, but back to God and this thing of I am yours and you're mine. So when I was going through all these things, right, which still happen even to this day, unfortunately, I remember I went in to talk to my mom who was visiting. And she was, I think, combing her hair. And I went in and I said, Mom, who am I? And I'm telling you, it's almost funny now. I was in my 40s, but because of many reasons, I needed to know, who am I? And she said, son, you're my son, first of all. I was crying. I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am. Who am I, Mom? I'm a failure at this. Typical 3. Failing at this, I'm failing at everything. I don't have my degree and I'm fat and I was probably like, 50 pounds lighter than I am now, but you know how we are, right? And my church isn't big and all the usual stuff. The same 2, 3, 4 things that we all just keep getting hung up on, right? And she said, David, you're my son first. And second, you are a child of God. And I'm telling you, that filled me so much. And then just recently, the last maybe few months in this 2020 experience, I read again, I've read this a million times, studied it in all languages. I don't know Greek, but I know enough to get in trouble in the Greek language, in the Old Testament references. I mean, from 10 commentaries and meditation, I've read the passage, I think it's in Matthew 4, where Jesus is baptized. I just talked about this 2 weeks ago. You can check it out here on my YouTube channel, where Jesus hears from his Father at age 33. See, this is another thing that I get hung up on, is my age and how I haven't succeeded by now, even though all my friends that are half my age, they're like, dude, you are so successful. I want your life. But anyway, these are all our own journeys, right? But in that moment, Jesus at age 33, or maybe he was 30, he was just beginning his ministry. So he wasn't like 10 or 8, 30 years old. The Son of God, what did he hear after he got baptized? from his Father in heaven. You are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. I love a translation. It says, in whom I have joy. You bring me joy, Son. You bring me gozo. And wow, I've read that a million times. My mom said that to me years ago. But in that moment, I saw an image that really helped me. This is like a vision from God or a picture from God. Because I'm on stage a lot, not these days, but usually, talking, teaching, preaching, leading, blah, 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 singing, of course. I've always wanted to have people clap. This is like being a comedian, a performer. They call the three the performer. If you are like me, now I know not everyone likes this, and some people may even judge this, but this is the gifting of any person that you see on a stage, spiritual or not. We love the applause because we feel that we're being effective. Like we're connecting with you. This is helping you, which is what we want. It's what I want. And so there are two events that really helped me. So I had this vision like 3 weeks ago where I saw Jesus. It wasn't like I really saw him. It was just a picture in my head. In the front row of my church, it was just me, nobody else. And he was cheering and saying to everyone, even though there was no one in the room, hey, that's my son up there. Hey, you guys hear what he just said? That's my son. And I am so proud of him. He's so amazing. And he was clapping like, yes. And I was telling jokes and I don't know, this is now I'm making it up. This is just me now thinking. I was telling jokes and he was laughing. This is Jesus, the Savior of the world, my Father, my Creator. And I'm telling you, that moment, that vision, that picture, that image that I had in my head, it has changed me deeply. Every time that I get on here and nobody's here, every time that blah, blah. Last week we had 3 times the number of people watching our online service. I'm not going to lie, that meant a lot. Here's the thing, not because of ego. This is where I think our minds usually go when we're not this way. We think, oh, pride. It's effectiveness. I want to prove to myself that I am doing the right thing, that I am listening to God, and the proof is in the pudding. If people are listening, if there are people in the room and not everyone's leaving like it's happened to me, then of course that energizes you, right? There is this give and take in anything that we do. A baseball player, how does he know if he's any good? Well, that's a great example, actually. When he hits the ball 2 out of 10 times, maybe 2.5, maybe 3 out of 10 times, if he's an amazing hitter. Talk about a kind of a weird concept, right? I expect, if I was a baseball player, I would expect to get on base 9 out of 10 times. And that's impossible. I mean, but my point is that when that moment happened, it really changed me. Another event that happened, and these are now we're talking about maybe those experiences that can help you know that you're doing the right thing, experiences with God or things that are spiritual. Another amazing experience that happened to me was also years ago. And I was preaching and I was just in my element. I love communicating. I love speaking. I love entertaining, meaning connecting. So that's not a bad word, to entertain, to connect, to educate, entertain, to, I forget the third E that Cliff uses, entertain, educate, and something else. I'll have to think about it. But, you know, we all enjoy, I mean, why do people love Trump? Because he is entertaining, right? And so there's nothing wrong with being a leader who entertains. We all respond to that. But anyway, so I was up there and then I remember this beautiful old man who now has passed away since. He got up without any prompting. No one had asked him to. And he had what we would call a prophetic utterance. He said, this is man's anointed for this church. This is man's anointed, God's anointed for this church. Listen to him. Basically, it was the same thing that Jesus heard from his Father, that my mom told me when she was combing her hair, that I heard from God through that passage. The same thing that this beautiful old man who had been one of the founding members of that church had a prophetic utterance to proclaim in front of everyone, a packed room. I didn't ask him, of course, to say anything. On his own, at the end of my sermon, he got up and he said, "This is God's anointed for this church." And when I feel like I am the worst speaker, leader, human, blah, 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 ever, I go back to these prophetic moments, these stories, these visions, these events with my mom, or with the scriptures, or with someone who comes up and hugs me and says, "Thank you for being authentic," or an email. I got an email today from another friend who said, "Thank you for being so authentic." And I don't take that as, well, I don't want to be authentic. I know that's my brand. I don't like that word. That's just who I am authentically, is funny, quirky, creative, but that's how God made me. Now, I guess the last thing I want to say is talk about success. Speaking of success, right? And results. Now, my friend Cliff was talking about similar things, how he also is a shiny object person and goes from project to project, all things that I do. And he was saying, I'm proud of that. It's not a syndrome or a disease. I'm proud of it. That's why I've succeeded. And then he showed a video from TikTok by Mark Cuban, the billionaire owner of Microsoft, I think, and the Dallas Mavericks. I don't know, a bunch of things from Shark Tank, And this video was so amazing. It was just like 10 seconds, but it was Mark Cuban saying, you don't have to get everything right. Maybe you've seen it. You just have to get one thing right, and it'll set you up for the rest of your life. And it hit me so hard, because I think when you're like us, right, who are always trying to do so many things, or who want to succeed so badly, we think, man, that didn't work, and that didn't work, and that didn't work. I have so many things that didn't work. So many things that I was like, okay, I don't know what that was about. And yet there have been so many things, like playing the piano, like the Rubik's Cube, like a million other things that have been grand slams. And so right now I'm in a season, maybe we all feel this way, where it's like, okay, that's not working. That's not working. That didn't work. Or this year didn't work. But I believe, like Mark Cuban says, that all you need is one thing for life to work for you. All you need is one miracle, one connection, one day, one moment, one live stream that connects with someone, one conversation with someone that you knew years ago, that can focus all of your hard work and passion and commitment to God, and can focus all of that stuff so that you can see the results that you deserve, that you long for, that you know are in your heart, and that will help you fulfill the destiny that is in you. For me, is to be an amazing communicator, an amazing musician and leader in an amazing large church, where I can impact people through these platforms, online, in person. And that's on top of what I already have, which is this beautiful wife, this beautiful family, while at the same time being a broken man who deals with fear and anxiety, who has been in therapy, who is vulnerable. I don't mean like, okay, vulnerable sounds like I'm weak. Who is comfortable talking about my vulnerabilities is what I mean to say, about my weaknesses, which is very biblical, even though people may not like that. But I know that that's only a part of the story of grace. And I've had these significant prophetic moments that urge me, that move me forward to never give up, like that sticky on my computer. And I give it up to God at the end of the day. I know who I am. Who am I? I am yours, and you are mine. And that's why I know I will survive, and you will too. You will succeed at whatever you are doing, whether you're 20, 30, 50, 60, no matter what age, no matter this 2020 experience that we're going through. We will not be shaken. We will get through this. That's what I have up here. We will get through this. You will get through it, whatever you're dealing with. I remember we had a scare like a month ago when, how our daughters both have jobs, and someone in their work got this whole thing. So they sent an email. Man, I thought we were all now in respirators. Sorry about that. We have a beautiful family here. And it's just me, right? And that's just human, right? I mean, who doesn't feel this these days? We all are on pins and needles, right? Whether it's with health or finances or school or our kids. I mean, you have to, and this is what I've learned, give yourself a break. You are only human. And maybe some of us deal with more panic than others, but other people, they drink. Other people, they get angry. They hit a wall. Other people, they never want to leave the house. I mean, we all are managing this 2020 year experience as best as we can with God by our side. But here, my point is that, like a song that I wrote, I'm a man who's broken. I'm a man that's got all kinds of visions, but also contradictions. And yet I know who I am. I am yours. And God is mine. I'm his beloved son. He's cheering for you in the front row. And maybe for you, you don't need someone cheering, but you need someone washing your feet. Maybe you don't need someone to wash your feet, but you need someone to run and hike and go on an adventure with you. Whatever it is that you need, God is faithful. And he does that, like Jeremiah 29 says, to give you a future and a hope. All your dreams will come true in Jesus' name. I just believe it. You just have to go through this process that here through this hour-long, I told you I go for an hour to hour-long path journey. Maybe you can pick a few things, a few gems, as the cool kids call it, to apply to your life. At the end of the day, you have to love who you are. I love who I am with all my bumps and bruises. And you also have to love who you are. There's nothing wrong with loving who you are. Don't judge yourself. Stop listening to those religious voices, at least for me, that tell you, oh, don't love yourself. That's pride. That's ego. There's no pride in me. And if there is, you confess it and you say, Lord, help me, and keep moving. Well, one of the things that I love to do is to coach people. I do this for free, obviously. I don't have any business here that I'm trying to sell you, but I do want to offer you my conversational and listening ear. Call me, email me, put a comment below, private message me, DM, whatever. If you have my number, text me, so that maybe we can just continue the conversation. I am thinking of having some sort of paid group, not for the people that I love, like my parents, obviously, or even my church, but for just people that maybe are not a part of my immediate community that want to invest. Like I wanted to invest with my friend Cliff, $1,000 a month. I'm telling you, I would have done it if I could. And maybe you are at a place, it won't be $1,000, but maybe, I don't know, whatever it may be, that you want to be a part of a community, a paid community where we are learning some of these principles that I'm learning. I'm no expert, but I am definitely in the race to win, like Paul says. So leave me a comment below if you want to be a part of this mastermind or of this group of achievers and spiritual seekers and healers and creatives. You don't have to be a musician, by the way. You can be a coach. You can be an entrepreneur. You can be work at a supermarket. But perhaps you want to learn how to communicate better online. You want to learn how to set up a podcast and a live stream. You want to just simply get your message out there. And you want to learn how to become more confident, how to overcome those negative Nancy's, those, what do they call them? Those, I forget what they call them. Those things that harm us, that get in the way. Those tapes and those negative thoughts. Well, thank you so much for being here. Leave me a comment below. If you're watching this maybe later after the fact, thank you for being here. I will see you next time.